and welcome back to A Clear and Obvious podcast. As always, I am Archie Corbett and I'm joined by Sam Cole. Sam, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Archie. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Ollie, how are you? You're looking pretty alarmed there, my friend.
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm excited to be back. I really enjoyed it last time. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. What's the cause for alarm, Ollie? We're all sat here with bated breath because you looked very alarmed as I opened proceedings. What's going on in the land of young?
I just wanted to make a funny face. I'm not gonna lie.
All right.
And
Wow.
Fair enough, mate. You had us all. Yeah, it's absolutely boiling today. So that's not much fun. How are you guys dealing with the sun? Are you all, have any of you dabbled in a paddling pool at all, or have you skipped that part of proceedings?
We haven't got one yet. We need to though, because it's so hot. Every day I'm in my bedroom with all three windows open and my fan on full blast, and I'm still melting. It is ridiculously hot.
It's quite toasty, isn't it? Ollie, what about you, mate? How are you dealing with the heat?
not very well. I'm not gonna lie. I'm in my mum and dad's room to record this, just so my room doesn't get too hot. It's horrible. I hate it. I wish I had a paddling pool, but I don't. So I just have to put up with it. And yeah, it's pretty bad. I was gonna say a rude word, but I didn't. But do you know what I did do today? I listened to your episode with Mark Clattenburg.
Oh, really? And Sam,
yeah.
where can you listen to that?
You can listen to that on YouTube and Spotify. Yeah, you can.
You can indeed. Yeah. It's what were your thoughts on the Clattenburg interview, Ollie?
I thought it was good. I thought you melted out by not asking him about the Welch of the week. You should have done a Welch of the week with Mark Clattenburg. Open it up to a new audience. That would have been amazing. But
Open it up to the masses. Yeah.
I was impressed that you got him on. Is this another one that you just added on LinkedIn? Or
mate, no one can know. It's secrets of the trade. It's the underground of podcast guests. Yeah, it's a real secret. It's something the FBI have been trying to find out for a while, but they just can't. But yeah, no, the Clattenburg interview. It's out. It's everywhere. It's actually quite good. He was brilliant on it. He gave some interesting insight into stuff, gave us some stuff with VAR, talked about how he got abused over the phone, had to cut his phone lines, got death threats. It's all fun and games. But anyway, let's get straight into what we're doing today. We are doing the hot takes. Sam, do you want to open us up with this one?
Yeah, no, sure. We're gonna start with the classic. We're gonna start with the Welch of the week. This is for those that don't know, this is an opinion sent in by one of the Welch family, normally James so far. We've got a James Welch opinion again today, and his controversial take is that neither Celtic nor Rangers would stay up in the Premier League. Archie, what are you thinking about that?
I'll tell you what, that's a take like today, because today is very hot, and that is a very, very hot take. But you know what? It's not too hot. I can kind of... I agree with that they're not going to stay in the Premier League if they were to be introduced to it, because we were going through it a little bit earlier, and there aren't many players, I'm sure we'll go into it more, aren't many players from both of the two teams that would get into a Premier League side. And you look at it, and they're both able to dominate Scottish football. Sorry, has someone farted?
That wasn't me. I can verify that
Sam,
now.
Sam, do you want to introduce your dog to the podcast?
Yeah, this is my dog, Charlie. Yeah, he's just... I didn't want to move him, but I might have to now.
Keep him. He provides the sound effects. Sorry, I got slightly sidetracked there. Yeah, I don't think they stay in the Premier League. Celtic are a big club, as are Rangers, and they could turn over some decent revenue, which is why, upon reflection, they could probably stay in the Championship, maybe be up and down between the two. But I could see them being, with the current state of their two squads, being a two Championship level sides. So this Welch of the week isn't too controversial in my opinion. Ollie, what are your thoughts?
Originally, I disagreed and thought that they could maybe get mid-table. But then, before we started, Archie read out their squads. And I agree now. I don't think they could stay up. I think Jarrod is better than both the squads put together now. So I don't think they'd stay up. I reckon they'd go down. But I think maybe because of the fact that currently both are getting either Europa or Champions League football, so they're getting a lot of revenue through that. I reckon if they were to, they wouldn't just bung them straight in the Premier League. I reckon they'd sort their stuff out first, and they'd get some players in to maybe help them stay up.
Yeah, they'd certainly have to adjust it, wouldn't they? Sam, what are your thoughts on
it? Again, make it a full house. I agree with this opinion, and I don't think there'll be a lot of times where you won't agree with the Welch of the week because it's normally so controversial. But this week, I think he's on the money. Celtic, they've got an all right squad. They've got I think 3 players that were proper Premier League players. It's Fraser Forster, goalie, I'd say would fit in the Prem. Oliver Nchan, or whatever his name is, and Edouard, who's been linked to a lot of Premier League clubs. Other than that, I think the rest of the players would struggle to make it into a Premier League squad. And then there's Rangers, who have Jermaine Defoe. I don't think they really have the facilities for that big man. I don't think they've got the team to stay in the Premier League. I mean, yeah, Ryan Kent is hugely overrated because of FIFA, and yeah, Rangers, no way would they stay up in the Premier League. Celtic, maybe. Rangers, no way.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on context, doesn't it? So if for some reason Scottish teams, particularly those two, were going to come into English football, I think the only fair way you could do it is genuinely starting them from the bottom. I'm not talking League Two. I'm talking non-league. You start them from non-league because there's no fair way you can just chuck them in and like relegate like a Carlisle or someone. It's completely unfair. I think you genuinely chuck them at the same level as like Tunbridge Wells, for example, and you have to make them come up. If you were to chuck them straight into the Premier League, they would probably do all right because they'd gain revenue from that. They'd be able to make some solid signings. They'd both get incredible gate receipts because they'd be in the Premier League. They'd continue to get more capacity than they currently do. They've both got huge grounds, so their overall turnover would increase massively, and they could probably turn into quite a big club. But the current state of their squads, if that was to come into the Premier League, it would probably get battered every week, in my opinion.
Yeah, no,
I agree. I reckon, rather than just shoving the Premier League, I reckon the FA Cup, they should be in the FA Cup as well, the Scottish teams. I reckon, because I remember you did one of your first episodes on a full English. You were speaking about the FA Cup, and is it dying? And I think a way that you could revive it is bring the Scottish teams in as well. And I reckon that would make it more interesting. Because I think it would really show the quality and all the quality difference between the two. Because didn't Celtic, they won like the treble, like the Scottish treble, like 3 years in a row or something, didn't they?
Yeah, they're going for like the treble, aren't they? Yeah. That's it.
And it's like, I understand that's like history in the making in Scottish football, but it's like seeing you could literally go, like drive a couple hours south and you can find a team that can probably beat them in Newcastle. I don't think that it's that amazing. It's like saying that, say if Charlton won the championship and it's like, it's the historic 15th win of the championship. It's like, great. It's not that amazing. But yeah, I think they should bring them into the FA Cup. I think it would make it a lot more interesting if they brought them to the FA Cup and if they put, like the Welsh National League, they just shove them, just put them in the 4th round. Don't even like make them start low. Put a Welsh team in the quarterfinal. Mix it up. Just annoy everyone. That's what I think. Just annoy everyone. Just mix it up completely.
I reckon you could do it if you brought them in the preliminary rounds. I reckon chucking a Welsh team into the quarterfinals might be a bit of a stretch.
It'd be great though. It'd be a laugh. Think about it. Think about it instead. You win the Welsh National League rather than you get like Europa League qualifying rounds. You just get put in the semi-final of the FA Cup. That would be great.
I could fully back that. That'd be hilarious. If they wanted to experiment one year, I reckon bringing in Scottish teams could be interesting because you do still have Welsh teams in the FA Cup. You've got Cardiff, Swansea, and Wrexham. And you got teams that are able to get in the FA Cup through those routes. It's just the teams that are in the Welsh League, they're there for a reason. It's because they're not very good. But I reckon, Scottish teams you could bring in to the preliminary rounds, I reckon, and make them start through that. Maybe Celtic in like the 3rd round or something. But any more thoughts on this particular Welch of the week, which surprisingly we've all agreed with?
No, not really. I think it's pretty true.
Yep, okay. We'll move on. Thank you, James, for providing us with more content. We're going to move on to the next one, which is quite a pretty flaming hot take, I'd say. It's that Paul Scholes is overrated by Man United fans. Now, this is kind of a combination between Joshua Bacon and Charlie Carr, because Charlie Carr put it in a way that he shouldn't be compared with Lampard and Jarrod. Sam, you said something on the last podcast before we started recording, very controversial about Paul Scholes to me. I don't know if you can remember what it is, and if you can't, I'll remind you.
I don't remember what it was.
You said, and I quote, "I would rather have James Milner in my squad than Paul Scholes."
Yeah,
Do you stand by that?
I'd stand by that, mate. I love Milner.
I'd stand by that, and I'll tell you why. I'd rather Paul Scholes, right, was a better player than Milner. Like, don't get me wrong, Paul Scholes is a brilliant player, better than Milner, fair enough. But James Milner is so versatile. He can fill in at left back, he can fill in at right back. You can put him on. I'm sure, put him in goal, he's keeping a clean sheet. You're fine. James Welch probably thinks he's better than Alisson. Like, he's such a decent versatile player, and I just think having that versatility, it's just so crucial nowadays to Premier League sides, and I'd stick by that. I'd rather have Milner.
So would you rather James Milner than Kevin De Bruyne, Sam?
No.
But James Milner's more versatile than Kevin De Bruyne, though.
Yeah, but
Kevin De Bruyne is a better player.
True.
Kevin
I reckon Kevin De Bruyne is more versatile.
Kevin De Bruyne at his peak's better than Scholes. In my opinion, because
I'm just trying to think of a similar player.
It's quite hard because Scholes played deeper, than De Bruyne, and De Bruyne gets assists and goals. Scholes didn't get the assists he should have done. He scored some screamers, but didn't score that many goals. And the way I think. So the way this question's been put is Scholes is overrated by Man United fans. I agree with that because Man United fans make it out like Scholes should be in the conversation with Lampard and Jarrod. And I'm not going to lie, he shouldn't be. Well done, better pass accuracy. But, like, you pass backwards, like, so much more than those two players. Jarrod and Lampard, despite scoring and assisting more, have better defensive stats and better stats going forward. So I just don't understand how he's in that conversation.
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting one. There is one stat that does need to be brought up. I'm not sure if it's still relevant at the minute, but it's going to be around this. Is that Trent Alexander-Arnold needs 37 assists in his next 430 Premier League games to equal Paul Scholes' tally, and he's a 21-year-old defender. That's an interesting stat. But aside from statistically, Paul Scholes is a beautiful player to watch. He was watching him play was beautiful. He was a graceful player. He was an incredible creative force, and despite the statistics not necessarily backing it up, he was a very good player. I think the take that James Milner, you'd rather James Milner than him is. I'm not gonna lie to you, Sam. That's worse than most Welch of the week. That's diabolical from you. But he was part of one of a generational Man United team. I get that he is overrated when you compare him to the likes of Jarrod and Lampard because those two were complete talisman for their team, whereas Scholes didn't have the exact same impact on that Man United team. Fine. But Scholes, we can't underplay how much of a good player he was. There's a reason, and I know you're going to tear me down for this, but there's a reason that players talk, other like the likes of Xavi, Iniesta, talk about him as this brilliant player. But I also do think, on your point, that's why he's overrated by Man United fans. It's because of these fables and these quotes that you get from Xavi and Iniesta that are saying like he's the best player they've played with and all this sort of thing, which is just a lie. But Ollie, what do you think about this Scholes debate?
I think, to be honest, I do think he's overrated by Man United fans. I think I'm not going to say that because that's even more controversial. But actually, no, why not? I'll say it. He's their Mesut Ozil, isn't he? Really? He's creative, but at the end of the day, you know, if you want someone to get the job done, you wouldn't pick him. I think if you're going on by talent, I think with a lot of this, they're going on with Paul Scholes just purely by his talent. But it's more than just talent that's needed for him to be in the conversation with Jarrod and Lampard. Like, if you're going on talent, then some people say that Joe Cole is like the best footballer they've ever seen and things like that. And like Joe Cole was a great footballer, but he wasn't like one of the world's best. And I don't think Paul Scholes is on Lampard and Jarrod's level either. I think To be fair, I think you've slated James Milner's name a bit there, Archie. Because I think if James Milner had been put through the Ajax system of total football, he'd be rated one of the best players in the world. But he's doing it without even being there. He's already doing total football. You can put James Milner at left back and shove him on the right wing, and he'll still give you 7 out of 10. He's one of the 7 out of 10 players, which is important in a team. Whereas I think Paul Scholes he's a specialist, really, isn't he? You need him. He's the flair. He's what makes your team look good.
I like James Milner. I hold my hands up. I might have slated him a bit there, but he's basically Gareth Barry. No, I like James Milner. As you say, he's a versatile player, but to put him on the same level, if not, you'd rather him than Paul Scholes is I can't look past that. He was a very good player. Go on.
I can't believe you just called him Gareth Barry.
Yeah,
that is insulting.
What has James Milner done of any note in his career?
Oh, I wonder. Maybe
he's won the league with City. He's won the Champions League with Liverpool.
Yeah, but that wasn't because of him. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. But Paul Scholes, I would rather Paul Scholes in my team than James Milner personally.
Yeah, but he pocketed Messi in a game when City played Barcelona.
Yeah, but Paul Scholes has had individually good games. You can point out individually good games where he scored worldies.
On the route to the Champions League final, where Liverpool lost, Milner had the most assists in the Champions League. That's a player playing in a similar position to Scholes was. And Scholes, you've got to remember, was a massive, not massive, but at times he was a liability. He did stuff which was so dumb. I think it was in the Champions League where the ball was crossed in and he could have just headed it in for a goal and he just decided, I'm just going to slap it in for no apparent reason. He did things which just were a liability. And you asked me who I'd prefer to have in my team. And if it was my team, I'd prefer Milner because Scholes is in his specialist position was brilliant, but then he could only play one position realistically. If you take him on that Man United team, he's having to he worked in that system, but he wouldn't have played as well in another team system because they had a very specialist position for him.
Okay, I'm going to mediate here. I've been harsh on James Milner. I'll admit that. He's a very good player. But personally, in terms of players I enjoy watching, and I'm not necessarily talking about statistics here, I'd always want Paul Scholes more. His range of passing was unbelievable. He's played however many times for England and has actually played quite well for England. His England record is amazing, like Jarrod and Lampard, and I don't think he should be on that level. I do think he's overrated by Man United fans, which is what the original point is. So we'll go back to that because we didn't actually give the first one a ranking. So we'll move on from the rating system for this. We'll use the rating system for this one. We'll pretend it wasn't existing for the Welch of the Week one. Paul Scholes is overrated by Man United fans is the initial statement. Ollie, in terms of if 1 is you agree with it most and 10 is you disagree with it most, because we need to clear that one up. What are you going with?
I'm going with a 3, but I think that's because Man United overrate every player they've ever signed anyway.
Yeah, that seems fair. Sam?
I'm going for a 1. Don't get me wrong. It sounds like on this podcast that I think he's rubbish. I think he's a brilliant player. I thought he was incredible to watch, but I think there's players I'd rather have in my team, and he's not the kind of footballer that I necessarily enjoy as much as other people, so I'm going to give that a 1.
So do you not enjoy... Sorry, just back to the James Milner point. Would you enjoy watching James Milner more than Paul Scholes?
I appreciate what James Milner does.
But do you enjoy watching him? There's a difference.
Yeah, no, I guess you're right. Scholes did have some brilliant long shots and some awesome passing in them, so... Yeah, nah, that's fair.
Can I quickly ask?
Go on.
Would you rather Paul Scholes or Wayne Rooney?
Wayne Rooney. Not even close.
Rooney?
Not even close. Yeah.
Oh,
personally.
There we go. That wasn't as controversial as I thought it would be. I'd rather Rooney as well. I thought, because, if they're rating Paul Scholes as high as Lampard and Jarrod,
Yeah, I'm not. I don't think he is. And I do think he's overrated by Man United fans. I don't think he's... I'm going to go with probably 3 or a 4 on this one, just because I do think there's been a lot of Paul Scholes slander recently. Sam's gone. There's been a lot of Paul Scholes slander recently just because he doesn't get the numbers like other players does. We'll word that a little bit differently. Paul Scholes is on the same level as Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard. 1 to 10. 1 being you agree with that most, 10 being you disagree with that the most. Ollie, go.
Wait, so are we saying, so if I say 10, I'm saying I disagree that Paul Scholes on the same level as Lampard and Gerrard?
Yeah.
Then 10.
Yeah. Sam?
Yep, 10, easy.
10. All right, I'll mediate a bit. I'll go with an 8 or a 9 because he was a very good player, but numbers-wise, those two do completely eclipse. So I was just interested to see the difference between the two. Sam, do you, after you've had your swig of water, do you want to give us our next hot take? Now, unless anyone has anything else to say on the Scholes front.
No.
Not really, no. I think I agree with you that people slander him too much as well, though. I think that happens, though, when people overrate people. And I think it happens with a lot of Man United players.
Yeah.
They do overrate their players. Like Bruno Fernandes, I hate now. Not because he's good, but because they seem to think he deserves a knighthood for, like, playing well in his first few games. And it's like, he is a world-class player, but let's calm down a bit, okay? Let's not start throwing too many, huge things out there by saying he deserves a Ballon d'Or and that sort of shit. They're saying he deserves to be the team of the season after a month. But, anyway, that's all I'm going to say on that. Carry on.
Good stuff. Sam, hit me.
Right, so the next opinion is sent in by Kieran O'Connell. And this opinion is that if PSG played in the Premier League, they wouldn't get top 4. And his reasoning for this is that they are not better than City or Liverpool. United with Fernandes could beat them, and they aren't better than Chelsea or Spurs. No mention of Arsenal in there.
It's fair enough. It's fair enough in the current climate.
Slander that, but we are shit, so fair enough.
Let's you know what we do? I reckon for this one, we give a rating at the start, discuss it, and see if our ratings change at the end of talking about it. So in terms of agreeing with it, I think that's quite a good way of going about it. In terms of them not getting top 4, I'm going to go with an 8. I disagree with this fairly heavily. I'm not going to give any reasons yet. Ollie, what do you think?
I think top 4, I think they could get top 4. I think if it was, would they challenge? I think it would be that they definitely wouldn't. I don't think they'd challenge for the league, but top 4, yeah, I think they would get top 4. So I'll say a 7. Sam,
I only give a 3.
Oh, okay, Sam. Well, you've given us a little bit of a little bit of a dilemma there. What? Go on, let's hear some reasons.
So, PSG, right? They're a decent team, right? Let's not get it like twisted. They're decent. They're a decent team. However, they would not. I don't think their team would cope in the Prem. They've got certain players who would, but stick Neymar, right? Play up against James Tarkowski and Ben Mee at Burnley at Turf Moor. Neymar's coming home. He's going to be ruled out for 3 years. He's going to go round his sister's house as soon as flipping possible because it'll be a birthday every day of the year all of a sudden. He's going to hate it. And Mbappe debatably is, until he plays in a top league, it's quite hard to judge how good he is. Yes, he's done well for France, but I think until he plays in a top league, which the French league isn't, it's hard to judge. Idrissa Gana Gueye would be perfectly suited, played really well for Arsenal. They've got Di Maria, another attacking player.
Hang on.
Everton, sorry. Di Maria kind of flopped at United, whether that's his fault or not, but he didn't really like the English leagues and didn't like United. I think their team is massively overhyped just because the French league is like low quality and they just demolish every team. And I agree with him. Like, they're nowhere near the level of Liverpool or City. I think United on their day could probably beat them with their counter-attacking style. I'd say Chelsea probably again could beat them, and Tottenham maybe.
So this is the thing, because PSG have an incredibly talented squad, particularly going forwards. The players that you mentioned, you didn't even bring in Icardi, who they've just bought. He's one of Europe's best strikers on his day. So that's 4 very good attackers. Obviously, the majority of them are unproven in the Premier League. As you say, Di Maria didn't do brilliantly, but whether that's down to him or not. And I think he has developed as a player since. I think he's developed quite a lot, actually, but that's also with the help of playing in a Farmers League. in terms of Mbappe, he helped drag France to a World Cup, which we can't overlook. And obviously, he's not proven. Again, none of his players are, as we say, in the Premier League. I think he would do very well just because of the type of player he is. He's quick, he's strong, he's got brilliant finishing, and he's far beyond his years in terms of the way he plays. So I think he would do very well. But my issue with them potentially getting top four would be the consistency issue, because they do slip up every now and then. I think they lost to Amiens earlier in the season, and Amiens are like League One level team. Like there's the odd game where they do slip up. In the Champions League, they do regularly, like they flatter to deceive quite regularly. But I think they would get top four personally, just because they have got that talent. I think Marquinhos is a heavily underrated defender. I think their midfield's very good. Gay he had a brilliant season when he was at Everton. He's a very good player. And I think if they came into the Premier League, they would adapt because they've got the money to. Let's not forget, PSG are one of the richest clubs in the world. If they were to come into the Premier League, they'd look at it and go, okay, we need to bolster at the back, because defensively they're not amazing, PSG. They look all right because they're in the French league, but defensively they've not got the strength and depth. And that might be their issue. So I think they would get top four, but I don't think it would be as consistent as someone like a Man City or a Liverpool challenging for a title. But I think they'd get. I personally do think they get top four. Ollie, what do you think?
I think they get top four, but I also think they're the most overrated team in Europe. I think they're incredibly overrated because I think you get a lot of fans in France, of course, love them because I think they're one of the only teams from League who really, represent and do well in Europe. But I think also you get quite a lot of. I've seen a lot of American fans wearing PSG shirts and things like that. And I think they're overrated because their fan base, they have a fan base that seems quite bought, they are basically the Man City of France, but I think Man City are way better. While, of course, people joke because they say things like empty had and things like that because Man City's fan base is, of course, most of them aren't from Manchester now. I think it's similar with PSG, but I think Man City have earned everything they have in terms of they have quality players now, whereas I think PSG would not do very well in the Prem. Because like you said, I think the consistency, the fact that they just get lazy because they're playing, like you said, they're playing in a farmers league. Like there's no competition for them. And that's one of the reasons they slip up in Europe all the time, because they'll Neymar will get injured against Nice, and then he's unfit to play Real Madrid in the Champions League because their managerial decisions and things like that, they just don't. Lots of the players they sign don't make sense. They signed someone from Stoke when they got relegated. I know that, and it's why would you even bother? If you want to win the they could buy the Champions League essentially. All they'd have to do is just they could just buy a squad for Ligue 1 and then buy a squad for the Champions League because they have that much money. But they never spend their money properly. They always waste it. They're not, other than going forward, they have nothing at the back really. This is the same team who, how far up, they were 4-0 up against Barcelona, weren't they? And they lost 5-1 at home. And that was with, Unai, the fraud Emery, in charge. I just thought I'd throw that dig in there. He's shit planet. But they're not. I think they could get top four, but at the end of the day, I also don't think they would get top four. I reckon they'd finish 5th or 6th. And even then, I don't think they'd win the Europa League. I think they'd just fall down even further downhill. They're incredibly overrated as a team, and the fact that I think a lot of people said they reckon they'll win the Champions League this season. That requires them to be able to turn up for every game, which they never do. They always switch off. So it's they essentially just have a team of David Luiz's, pretty much. But yeah, that's my opinion. I think they could get top four, but not necessarily.
Go on, Sam.
I don't know. I don't think they could get top four, and their team's all right. I don't remember who their manager. I know it's
Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah, Thomas Tuchel.
He's a good manager.
No, I'm sorry, but they're another one of the main. I think Nagelsmann said it in an interview once, and I don't remember the exact phrasing, but he was managing is 30% tactical, and the other 70% is something about player cohesion or something like that, or developing relationships with players. And it's Tuchel fair enough, could be a good tactical manager, but he has no control over that PSG team. Big personalities in that squad run that team. You think Kepa was in charge of Chelsea for a bit. Neymar's been flipping the manager of PSG for years now. And the big personalities run that team. And there's teams in the Premier League who I could see with Leicester who have a tight-knit squad, Wolves who have a tight-knit squad. There's so many clubs that don't necessarily have the talent, but they have such a tight-knit squad that work well together and they could beat PSG. I'm sorry, if PSG are looking, I know they they don't lose much, but they lose into like a Mainz, like you said, and just like teams like that. I'm sorry, they'd lose to like flipping Coventry. Like they're not PSG, a Mainz.
All right, okay, yeah.
Just to be clear, but like they're not good. How is a PSG the team that should be, if you look at their squad, fighting for the Champions League? They never are, and the big players never turn up in like that aren't in the big games. And sometimes in the big games they don't turn up. Like for example, Neymar, first leg against Dortmund, he's flipping absolutely terrible. Like he got an assist for the goal. He did one good thing. Then he's just dropping deep. He's just doing these rainbow flicks where his team are losing. I don't think their team is top 4, and I think they'd struggle to get top 6.
Just on you brought up a point there, Ollie, about them not challenging to win the Champions League while they're in the French league. I think it'd be interesting because I think if they came to the Premier League, they'd have their first few seasons. I think they would struggle, but I think they'd adapt because I think that'd be how it goes. And I reckon they'd adapt and they'd make some shrewd signings because of the money that they've got, and they become a more consistent team. And if they were to do that, then I reckon if they were in the Premier League with that constant game after game having to turn up, and if they were able to develop that mentality over a few seasons, they would have more of a chance of winning the Champions League if they're in the Premier League. That's my view. Okay, are we sticking with the same ratings? I'm still sticking with my 8 because I still think they're making top 4. Despite your animated protests, Sam, I think Paris Saint-Germain, with their current team, are making top 4 out of 5 seasons. Ollie, well, I'll go with 8. Ollie, what are you going with?
I'm going to bring it down to a 5 because I've had a rethink. I think I agree with Sam. The personalities in there they're too big for them to push it all the way. I think the fact that have they had an unbeaten season in Liga? Because I think you'd expect them to, really, because like I don't think you have to turn up 100% each week to not lose a single game. And I think, I don't know if you guys have seen, that. You get those generic videos on YouTube, like infuriating football moments in 2020. In every one, there's always that video of Mbappe getting subbed off. And then he just has a tantrum and walks away from the manager when he's trying to talk to him. And he's how old's Mbappe now? Like 20 or 21? 21. And he's already got this giant ego. And I think, if anything, PSG is ruining players like his careers essentially, because he could be a Ballon d'Or winner, but I don't think they'd get top 4. I agree with you, Archie, that I think eventually they'd adapt, but I think they'd need to get rid of Neymar at least before they did that. So I'm going to bring it down to a 5.
It'd be an interesting experiment, certainly. Sam, are you bringing down your grade even further?
I'm sticking with my 3, and just on your point of you think they made shrewd additions. Financial fair play exists in the Premier League. It apparently doesn't exist
sometimes
in the French league. I know it doesn't necessarily exist as much as it should do because Man City should have probably had some punishment at some point, but. I don't think financial fair play would allow them to bring in the additions that they have so far. And you mentioned spending 60 million on Icardi. Yes, he's all right, but at the end of the day, he's like 30, 31. You're spending 60 million on that kind of player. I don't think their additions are that shrewd. I think
he's 27. It's a bit harsh.
All right, 27, fair enough, but I don't think he's necessarily that decent. Like he's on his day, he's great. But they could have got better players for less money. I don't think their additions are that shrewd. I think they just threw money at Neymar for shirt sales.
Yeah.
They threw money at Mbappe for shirt sales. They threw money. They're throwing money at players for shirt sales, and because they've performed and they're big names. I don't think they necessarily go for They should go for younger players. I think they just throw money at big names.
I'm not saying they're making shrewd signings at the minute. They are their team that makes the least shrewd signings at the minute. I'm saying if they came to the Premier League, they would be forced to do that. And with the money that they've got, they would set up a scouting system by which they could do that. Because they have made some decent signings. Like Idrissa Gueye is a shrewd signing. Verratti, when they bought him in initially, was quite a shrewd signing. Like they've made some good deals. But overall, yeah, I think they would. Ollie's a bit on the fence, and Sam doesn't think they would. Okay. Let's go on to one that I'm sure will cause a bit less debate. It's sent in by George Tomlinson, and he's saying that Jarrod Bowen will get an England call-up by 2022. Sam, as you've watched quite a bit of him because he was in the Championship with Hull, who George supports. What do you think on this? Just initial thoughts.
I don't think this is that bad an opinion, to be quite honest. I think this is a solid opinion. I mean, Jarrod Bowen this season, brilliant in the Championship. He and Grzycki have left, and then the relegation zone all of a sudden. That's not a mistake. I mean, Jarrod Bowen and Grzycki were both carrying. Like, honestly, I'm surprised they haven't got a broken back and that they can still play football after how much they were carrying that whole team, similar to how Mitrovic is carrying the Fulham team. But Jarrod Bowen is he was a very decent player. He's played in the Premier League before with Hull, stayed with Hull as they went down, and this season he's been so good with Hull, and he's looked a proper threat on the wing. He hasn't really been marked at a game too often. I mean, like the only job that comes to mind was when O'Doy marked him out of the game, but. But yeah, he's a very good player, and seeing him, I think it was a decent signing for West Ham. And seeing his performances at West Ham, I don't think he was like that great on the first game back from lockdown. But I thought first 20 minutes against Spurs, he was like running that defence, that Spurs defensive midfield ragged. He was nutmegging players here, spraying balls across the pitch, very direct run. I think he's a very decent player and could get an England cap.
Yeah, I could certainly see him getting a call-up. It's just he's in a position, unfortunately, where there's a lot of first-team quality, not necessarily depth, which is why I think he will get a call-up at some point. Because, as you say, of what I've seen, I didn't see much of him at Hull, I won't lie. But his numbers at Hull are good. He's a very good goal scorer, clearly. And it's if he can translate that into the Premier League, and the early signs are that he can. West Ham fans think it's a brilliant signing. He's looked good there so far. And I certainly see him getting into the squad and getting a cap. I don't see him starting. In the future, certainly when 2022 rolls around, but he could certainly be a backup and come in every now and then. I think. Ollie, thoughts on this?
I think because of the wording of it, I don't think it's that controversial. Just because Matt Jarvis got an England call up, didn't he? So I think if Matt Jarvis can, Jarrod Bowen definitely can. I think if it was, can he start for England at like a World Cup? I think then it would be a lot more controversial, just because, we got Sancho and Sterling on the wing. So, I don't think he'd get a chance. But I think in a friendly against, Malta, yeah, he definitely could.
Yeah, it doesn't take an awful lot to get an England cap these days. So certainly, Ryan Shawcross did. Let's be real. No, there's there has been some dodgy players that have got an England cap, but
not recently. If you think about it, the last dodgy England caps were 2012.
Yeah, Ricky Lambert.
In the recent few years, I don't think there's been that.
Tyrone Mings.
Yeah, debatably on the form at the time, debatably, I don't think it's that outrageous, like a David Nugent or a Matt Jarvis. That's not that bad. I don't think he deserves to be called up, and there's better centre-backs that should have been called up that haven't. But I don't think there's been that many bad England call-ups
recently. No, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I reckon there have been. I'm just trying to find them.
I don't think, recent years, I reckon we've tried some players out in the England team in some friendlies, and there have been some questionable call-ups, but none on the level of like a Matt Jarvis, for example. Sam, as Ollie's looking that up at the minute, in terms of agreeing with Jarrod Bowen getting an England call-up for England by 2020, 1 being you agree with it most, 10 being you disagree with it the most, 1 to 10, what are you going with? Give me some digits.
I'm going to give you a 4. I think he could, but it's very it depends on can he drag another team to staying in the league they're in, and B, just about the progression of other players really before 2022. Because if you think about it, in the England team at the moment, you think wingers, they've got Sterling, Rashford can play on the wing, and Sancho. After that, really, is there that much depth? I mean, you've got Redmond, who's quite hot and cold. Hudson-Odoi hasn't been the same since his injury. You've got Saka, who's coming through, not sure if he's a left back or left wing, or cam. You've got, and I just don't think there's that much depth at the winger position.
Yeah,
Really?
I'm just having a look, and the list isn't amazing, other than those first three, which is why I think that he could certainly get a call up, because obviously Saka could come through at that fullback position potentially, but he could certainly get a call up based on that. I'm gonna agree with that fairly heavily. I'm not gonna go with the same rating as you because morally that seems fairly incorrect. So I'm gonna go with a 3. Because I could genuinely see that happening. I mean, we're not going to call up like an Andros Townsend or anyone anytime soon. And I'd rather see like a Jarrod Bowen come in. I mean, Damari Gray, I mean, he looks all right when he came on, but I mean, I don't really see him getting back in that England squad too much.
The best winger that hasn't received an England call-up yet is Harvey Barnes, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's brilliant. No, that's a shout. That's a very good shout.
He's been phenomenal at Leicester this season.
That is a very good shout. Yeah, I'd like to see both of those guys given a chance in the England squad, certainly in friendlies. Maybe not the next major tournament, but certainly in some friendlies or some qualifiers building up to it. Ollie, have you found any horrible call-ups in the last few years, or are you going to give us some digits?
No, I'll just give it a digit. Apart from Jesse Lingard, I can't really find any. I'll give it a 3 out of 10. I don't think it's that controversial. I reckon he could. Looking at some of these, yeah, there aren't many wingers on here, so I reckon he definitely could. I agree, though. I think before he does, though, Harvey Barnes, James Maddison, Jack Grealish, those lot need call-ups before him, personally. But yeah, no, I don't think it's that controversial.
I don't think Jack Grealish, if he's going to get called up, should be called up as a winger. I think he's been less effective this season on the wing. Yes, he's got more goals and assists, but he's like the consistency of him playing at cam, getting goals and assists. He's just played on the wing more. That's why he's got more goals and assists on the wing. He's been more consistent at that cam position. And I think if he's going to get a call up, I think he should be playing cam realistically.
Yep. No, that seems fair. Should we move on to the next hot take? Sam, do you want to read us out this one?
Yeah, sure. So the next hot take is that the Bundesliga is a better league than the Premier League. And that was sent in by James Smith. Ollie, thoughts?
No. I'm going to simply say, I think Bernd Leno said this quote. He said he hates the Bundesliga because at the start of every season, it's just, Bayern are going to win again. And that is what it seems to be. Bayern they always put it out of the bag in the end, even if they start off. Like, the start of the league this season, I think this season you could say Bundesliga, in terms of entertainment, you could say it's better than the Prem this season. Just because in terms of entertainment, the Premier League haven't been that entertaining because there haven't really been a title race, it's just been Liverpool. But, the Bundesliga at the start, it was like the top 8 at least. They were all fighting for the title. Like, Munich and Gladbach were up there. Dortmund started off badly. But then in the end, it does always just end up being Bayern Munich, and then maybe Dortmund chasing them till the last few games. But no, I don't think it's better than the Prem.
Certainly over the years, yeah. This season, I agree with you what you say there, Ollie. It's been a more entertaining league in terms of competitiveness, even though Bayern are now starting to run away with the title, and they've already been awarded it. But no, not awarded it. Sorry, they've already won it. But you look over the last 8. Bayern Munich won the Bundesliga for the last 8 years running.
I don't think so. I think Klopp won it, didn't he?
Yeah, but that was a good while ago now.
I think
Yeah.
Klopp has won it twice in the last 10 years, I think.
But I mean, okay, so we don't know the numbers exactly. But Bayern Munich's dominance in the Bundesliga just seems to keep going. And Dortmund put up a fight And as you say, they've won the league a couple of times in the last sort of decade or so. But it is less competitive over a decade period than the Premier League. It's certainly at the top. And I really enjoy watching it as a league. I've got to say, I've watched it a lot more this season, and I've enjoyed it a lot more than watching the Premier League, if I'm honest. Maybe because I'm an Arsenal fan and we're terrible. But it's a very entertaining league to watch. There are some individual talents in that league who are just incredible, who aren't even playing for the top teams. It's a very, very good league. And in terms of entertainment value, in terms of the way it involves the fans and being an affordable league for fans to go and watch, it is the best in Europe. Because they've got their 90+1, I think, is their system that they've got, where they bring fans in and they make it easier for fans to go to games and get season tickets. And so I think in terms of involving like a community and the fans, is a better league than Premier League. Other than that, I personally potentially biased. Overall, I enjoy watching the Premier League more, and I think it is a better league overall. Sam, you're a big Bundesliga fan. What's your thoughts?
You said there that Bayern that you mentioned something Bernd Leno said or whatever. I'm going to bring out something that Rooney said. Rooney came out recently and said that the Liverpool could very well emulate the Man United dominance under Fergie. And because this season Liverpool have just been like rampant all year, with the nearest competitor being Man City, who haven't really competed. And this season, right? I think over the last 10 years, Premier League's been a better league. But this season, like you've got relegation, like you got your Paderborns, who are bottom of the league, but they're playing exciting football. Like they're trying to play. Well, in the Premier League, there's a lot of teams who are shutting shop. So I think Bundesliga has been a far more entertaining league, just because it's been more. So Bayern having at the start of the season, admittedly, Dortmund or a Gladbach or a Leipzig should have kept it like that, and they didn't, and that's a shame. But it's still been exciting, because there were points of the season you're like, oh, Gladbach could win it here. Imagine if Gladbach win it. Well, Dortmund could win it here. Could they end? I mean, they didn't, but there's lots of question marks, and it's been teams like the resurgent Schalke. Admittedly, they've dropped off a cliff now, but under Wagner, one of the most exciting young coaches in Europe, debatably, Nagelsmann, one of the best young coaches in the world. They've got some of the best players, and in the Bundesliga, there's more. I feel like players can express themselves more. Sancho can do his skills, but then at the same time, he's been under Favre. He's been educated to know when to stop him, know the right time. Unlike Neymar playing in a French league, where he literally controls the manager and does rainbow flicks all game. Sancho knows when to do a skill and knows when to get the ball in the box or pass to a teammate. And there are players in the league who are so talented. Could be going to the Prem. Werner's now coming to Chelsea, which is very good for the Premier League, I think. Could be very exciting. But I think this season, the Bundesliga has been better than the Premier League on an entertainment basis. But overall, I think over the last 10 years, the Premier League has been better.
Yeah, just a small point on that you make there. Sorry. There is a reason the likes of Jadon Sancho and Jojo Kenny are going out to the Bundesliga. It's because it nurtures young talent, arguably better than the Premier League. Ademola Lookman, another one. Ampadu, another one. There are young players coming from the Premier League and English football, going out to the Bundesliga, getting a chance in the first team, and they're excelling. And that's largely one of the reasons why it's a very good league. And this season, I agree, it's been better. But overall, I personally think the Premier League.
I think it was the other day. It was confirmed that it's the first ever time that a Bundesliga team had snapped up a player who was from the academy on an academy contract. I saw that Rose, I think his name was, Everton goalkeeper. I think he's 17, 18. Has just moved to Schalke, to their academy. So a lot of English talents are seeing these Sanchos, seeing these Lookman, seeing these players and how they're developing out there. Nelson, another one. And are seeing their development, seeing the game time, and how unlike in the Prem, there's a clear path to the first team, and they're making the move. And I think the Bundesliga is great in that regard. And I love academy prospects. I really like the youth systems at clubs. I think it's very That's one of the reasons I really like the Bundesliga, because there's a clear Man City. There was no path to the first team. You got the Stockport, Iniesta, Phil Foden, who plays against Grimsby. He's got a few starts recently, but that's after so long of trying to get in that team. But in the Bundesliga, there's a clear. Well, I could see this Everton goalkeeper being the Schalke number 1 within like 3 years. Like, that's how good the pathway to the first team is. I just think it's just a great league in that regard.
I'd like to reply to a couple of things you said. I searched it. The last 10 years, Munich have won the Bundesliga 8 times. Dortmund have won it twice. So it has been. I think Archie was right. I think it has been 8 years in a row that Munich have won the league. I know this is off topic, but the Rooney thing that you said about Liverpool, I don't think they can do what Man United did, and I don't think it's because Liverpool aren't good. I think Liverpool have been the best team in the league this season. They've received a lot of hate for no reason, but I think because of FSG, the people who own them, the way they operate and the way they operate a lot of their teams is very much. It's like this season we'll go for it, and the next season we're gonna lay off a bit and make some more money and things like that. And I don't think they'll get the investment needed to quite make the dynasty that Man United made. And also the thing you said about youth players, I agree that they get more starts, but I don't know whether that's a shining thing on the Bundesliga or if it reflects the quality of the Bundesliga to suggest that these youth players from England and other countries are getting starts ahead of these other teams, of these other, more experienced players in the Bundesliga. I feel like that suggests more about the quality of the players in the Bundesliga rather than the fact that they're getting an opportunity, if you know what I mean.
I disagree. I think there's a lot of quality in the Bundesliga, even down towards the bottom of the league. I know like their bottom teams necessarily aren't as good as the English bottom teams, but they're still like quite decent. And I think it's just the fact that they're nurturing. So you're like Jadon Sancho, for example, at Man City was never like, if he'd have stayed there, I don't think he'd have played more than 5 games for Man City before he'd have gone off to a Championship or maybe a League One club. And he's gone to Dortmund, and he is now one of the top 20 best players in the world, probably. He is one of the best players. Like, he is such a good player. And there's other players. John Joe Kenny at Everton was like decent, but then if John Joe Kenny comes back for this loan spell and comes back to play in the Premier League, I think it will be clear that he's become a better player because of they look at youth differently out there. I think there's more. The managers take more time look at the academy system, while in the Premier League, because there's so much thought of like staying up, and so much there's so many fans that want success, and they don't want to risk it. I think that's the thing. I think it's just the Premier League don't want to risk bringing a youth player and possibly eventually a more experienced player, and it might not work. I think I think the Premier League don't risk it as much as they possibly should.
Yeah, there's certainly something to be said on a difference in culture with the Bundesliga nurturing young talent. I think it's a bit of both, because I do think it is Ollie's point is right in some regard in terms of Bundesliga teams are able to give those players more of a chance because they're typically less big spending than potentially a Premier League team. So I don't think it's necessarily a negative point on the Bundesliga that you're making there, Ollie, but it's a culture thing. That's how I see it. In terms of ratings, we're going to give Bundesliga being better than the Premier League. I'm going to go with about 7. I don't massively disagree with it. I don't think it should be thrown out, as we discussed to quite some extent there. But I also don't agree with it fundamentally. Ollie, what are you giving out of 10?
I'll give it a 6. I'd say it's the most like, in terms of, other leagues being like the Premier League, I'd say it's the most like the Premier League in terms of most of the other leagues out there. I'd say it's very entertaining, and there's a lot of passion there as well, which you can see. So yeah, I don't hugely disagree with it, but I wouldn't say it's better than the Premier League. So yeah, I'll give it a 6.
I'm going to give it a 4. I think just because this season, I think it's been better. The fans out there are incredible. That's another thing we haven't mentioned, how incredible their fans are and the support. Like, for example, at Union Berlin, like, if they hadn't had their fans there, they'd be down. I'm 100% sure on that.
That's why they're struggling now.
Exactly, because their stadium, their like tiers are pretty much on top of the players. And I think because this season it's been a better league, and I think that it could potentially become the best league in the world if the Liverpool dominance continues. So 4.
Okay. I'm aware of the time. We've gone on for quite a while here. We've got one more to come. Do we want to do this time or open the next episode with it? What do you guys think?
I say
I don't mind. It's not too controversial, so I don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our last point comes from the great Robbie Beard, friend of the show. Championship playoffs are more thrilling than the El Clasico these days. And to add to that, El Clasico is just shouting at the referee and diving. Which one of you two wants to bring this up first?
I'll bring it up as a huge fan of the playoffs. Having seen my team win a playoff final, the playoffs is brilliant. It's so exciting. It's just full of like anything could happen in the playoffs. It's so edge of your seat. There's some great talents that play in the playoffs. Yes, it's not of the level of the El Clasico, but the unpredictability of the championship of the playoffs, I think, makes it a level. I just think it's more exciting than the El Clasico, which in recent years, I'm going to use the word, I think it's become stale, if anything.
I mean, so I think it's a weird comparison to make because the playoffs are obviously multiple games, and there's 4 teams in it. So, for instance, from a basic point of view, there's a stark contrast there, which makes it tricky to compare the two in terms of entertainment, for sure. I think we're also looking at it from a very biased perspective because we are all in England and fans of English football, and none of us are massive La Liga fans as it goes. I mean, I enjoy watching it, but none of us are hugely into our La Liga football. I enjoy watching the El Clasico because of the atmosphere around it all. The football itself is very entertaining, but it does, as Robbie says, turn into this theatrical performance more than anything. So we're looking at it from fans of English football, and I don't think we can give the most unbiased view of this. So it will probably anger quite a few people that we're saying the playoffs are more thrilling than the El Clasico, because I agree. I do think they're more entertaining to watch, and I enjoy watching when they go to Wembley and John Terry crying on the pitch, particularly, all this sort of stuff. It's very fun to watch. But that's because we're from an English football culture perspective. We're watching it as English fans of football. So I think we look at it with rose-tinted spectacles slightly. But the El Clasico is still very entertaining to watch, and I do think it's received a bit of unfair slack recently because it's the most competitive 2-team derby in the world. They've both won the exact same amount of games against each other, and it's 2 of the best teams in the world. So we can't discredit that. But personally, I do agree with it. I think it's more thrilling than the El Clasico, but there are factors to bring into it.
I agree with it as well. I'd say that I think the El Clasico is turning into more of a tourist attraction, I think, because these teams, Real Madrid and Barcelona, I think they started from these teams that were built on, they were built on things like Madrid representing the fascist party in Spain and Barcelona representing, people wanting to be free of Spain and things like that. And it's gone from that to these teams they're not teams anymore, really. They're not clubs. They are franchises, essentially. They are symbols that you can see anywhere in the world. You can go, I guarantee you go any city in the world, you would see at least either a Barcelona or a Real Madrid shirt on at least one person. And I think it's turned from this fight, this sort of, thing that represented like almost the people versus, the government to this tourist attraction. Whereas I think the playoffs, I think that is purely based on that's 100%, regular fans. That's 100%. I can't believe I've forgotten the word now. Lost my voice as well. That was good. What is it?
What word are you looking for, Ollie? What? Describe the word. We'll play a guess the word game.
Right. So you describe it as basically the Inter Milan fans that wrote that letter to Lukaku. Not racist.
Ultras.
Ultras. That's the one. I mean, they are racist, but that is purely ultras championship playoffs. I think you go to a championship playoff final in Wembley. I don't think Wembley would get sold out, and I think that's because it is just the fans who care so much about their team rather than the game itself. I think it's more than just El Clasico is all about the match. So I think you get so many neutrals just watching it for the spectacle, whereas playoffs, I reckon at least 80% is purely people who care about who wins. And I think that in itself, you just look at the amount of pitch invasions you get in playoff finals compared to El Clasico in the last 10 years. I think you get way more pitch invasions in a playoff final. I think it's got so much more passion behind it. I agree. I think it's quite a lot more entertaining than El Clasico. I'm not saying El Clasico isn't entertaining, but I think purely from a standpoint of what you're watching, I say that playoffs is way more entertaining.
Sam, have you been to a championship playoffs?
I might have done actually. Yeah,
have
no, I have. I don't want to correct you because you made a brilliant point, Ollie, but you don't pitch invade at a playoff final. It's impossible at Wembley. But in a playoff semi-final, I was on the pitch. I have to admit, Craven Cottage when we won that. But yeah, it is. Playoffs are magical. Like my experience of the playoffs, and I'm going to be so biased on this just because like how life like one of my highlights of my life, to be honest, that playoffs, and so I'm going to be biased, to be honest, and say that the playoffs are much better. And I agree with you. I think the El Clasico is more of a tourist attraction now than a football game, and it doesn't have the quality it used to. I think since Ronaldo left, and even before that, I thought it was stagnating as a football game, and I think I don't think that it's as good as it used to be.
So with Mr. Beard's point, numbers, what we given? 10 being you disagree the most, 1 being you agree the most. Ollie, give us some digits.
I'll give it a 2. I really agree. I agree with it. I don't think it's very controversial.
Nice one. Sam?
I'm going to give it a 1, but I'm very biased.
I'm going to give it a 4 because there's an argument for the El Clasico being better as I portrayed, but I do personally enjoy the playoffs more. Right. That's all of our hot takes for this time. What we're going to do after this episode, we're going to put out another plea for your terrible opinions as football's returned, and I'm sure there'll be some on Arsenal, so me and Ollie can discuss that and cry together about it. But overall, thank you to everyone that sent in your opinions. We really enjoy doing this. I'm not a big fan of hefty opinions, as you might all know, but it's good fun. You all seem to enjoy it, so we're going to keep doing it. We love having Ollie on, even if this week he is on his phone and got some sort of disease with his gums. But yeah, it's great.
Yeah. I've got a lump slowly growing on my cheek, which I've just seen, which is good. Going to the dentist tomorrow, though, so it's fine.
Good stuff. I hope they can sort that out for you, Ollie.
Hopefully.
And, well, thank you for coming on, Ollie.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're becoming a regular fixture now, mate. So, no, much appreciated. Sam, do you want to sign us off?
Yeah, thank you for watching, guys. And thanks for the support on the Clanberg interview. We really do appreciate it. Some really great numbers at the moment. And we've got some great things coming soon. Stay tuned for that. But thank you for watching this video. To like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Go and subscribe to Straight to the Middle podcast. Goodbye.
Oh, yeah, forgot about that. Cheers. Yeah, see that.
Bye.